Macon, Georgia for next Tuesday. This is exit 9, business Route 8, Avenue 8.5E. Current temperature is 70 degrees here. Cool weather continues. I think it's supposed to continue all week here. Yesterday was very, very windy in the desert. Dust was blowing. Not as windy today. At least the dust is gone. So the plan is today to continue east on I-8. Hook up with I-10 and go east on there through Arizona into New Mexico. Eventually in Texas today. The weather is going to be okay. This is exit 12 to US 95 North, Tuna Road. I'm going to talk about a little bit here, if I can keep this video going, is the effect that changes in climate can have on local weather patterns. I spent the weekend in San Diego, in Southern California, and a lot of rain fell. It's third week of May. Snow fell on the surrounding mountain peaks. Temperature did not get out of the 50s on Saturday. It's been cloudy, cool, and wet. Actual rainfall. Normally in Southern California in May, measurable rain is almost unheard of. At least normally from what we've seen in recent decades. So is this just a random thing that has rained this much in Southern California, even though it's only over the weekend? San Diego has recorded a half-inch of rain in May. The month isn't even over yet, and there is more rain in the forecast. Normally, they don't get any rain in May, any measurable rain normally. The rainy season normally ends by the middle and end of April in Southern California. Or at least from what we're used to seeing under the climate regime we used to have, and I don't believe we don't any longer have. I believe the weather is beginning to shift gears to a cooler climate due to solar reduction occurring. I did some research over the weekend, weather records in San Diego, to see if the cooler climate does lead to more rainfall there in the month of May. What I found was pretty amazing that their weather records go back into the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century. And I looked at the precipitation records for each day in the month of May, in almost every single case, their rainfall records, daily rainfall records for May were set back in the middle 1800s. These records have not gone challenged since. They've stood since the mid-1800s in many cases. I looked back at the daily rainfall record for San Diego for May 20th, and it was 0.47 inches. I think it was set back in 1853. That record has stood since 1853. Anybody that knows climate history knows that back then glaciers were much bigger, climate was cooler in the earth. And back then, San Diego got rain very frequently in the month of May. Significant rainfalls, a half inch in one day, which is even more than what we've seen this month. And it was a fairly common occurrence back then. In the month of May, San Diego could get significant rainfalls in May. They were all in the weather records. Yet in recent times, they don't get any rain in the month of May, normally. None. It's usually over by the middle of April. So back then, what does that say? Well, back then, the middle 1800s, when the glaciers were bigger, climate was cooler, rainfall season in California extended into June. winter storms off the Pacific continue hitting California much later in the season than they do nowadays. In order for San Diego to get a half-inch of rain in one day, it definitely has to be a winter storm of some sort to give them that kind of rainfall in one day. In recent warmer climates, the storms don't come in off the Pacific as late in the season. They end a lot earlier. The jet stream moves north and the rains no longer hit California. So, back in the mid-1800s, the northward migration of the jet stream apparently did not happen until at least June in those times, rather than the middle of April. There's a 6-week, even 8-week difference in the seasons, in the timing of things. And I only believe that the cooling has just started. We are not where we were in the 1850s yet, because San Diego has not gotten a half-inch rain event in May like they did on a regular basis back then. So, that's very interesting. Many of the cool weather records of low record lows go back to the 1800s that remain unchallenged from in San Diego. Even a lot of the record highs go back to the 1800s. And this substantiates what I was talking about earlier about the West Coast being, and people get pulled over here because there was a 45 limit through there and people don't want to slow down. They wonder why they get pulled over. But getting back to what I was talking about, it's very interesting to look back at these records and see how even slight changes in the climate have so much affect the local weather patterns of certain areas. A slight cooling of the climate would lead to regular rain events in San Diego even into the month of May, where the storms would continue coming in off the Pacific even at that latitude, even well into May, which is unheard of in recent times. Obviously, this would mean more snow for the mountains. Less snow melt, advance of glaciers ultimately in time. But as I say, this has only just begun, and if the sun remains in a weak state of activity, that's perhaps in a few more decades, the climate will cool enough to where San Diego will see much wetter Mays than they're accustomed to seeing, much more common rainfall events. They have received a half-inch of rain this May, but it's spread out over several weather events. It has not come at once. But they do have a half-inch of rain already accumulated for the month of May. when normally they don't really get anything measurable. Normal is 0.09, but that's only, they probably may have been a rogue year or two where they did get some rain that brought it up to that. Normally, at least in the years I was there, Pendleton, they never got a drop of rain in May at any of the times I was there. Usually the deserts are already up in the 90s by the time May rolls around, middle of May. As you can see here, my thermometer reads only 71 degrees right now, and it's almost 10 a.m. So in cooler climates, the jet stream meanders a lot more than in warmer times. It dives south a lot more commonly. And it's these southward dives of the jet stream that create these seemingly out of season weather events. Colorado received 20 inches of snow out of the same system over the weekend. This would not happen during the period of global warming. Global warming, the jet stream pulls north and meanders a lot less. However, those same meanders of the jet stream can create heat waves, especially on the west coast. As I've talked about in my last video about climate, if jet stream meanders way north over the west coast, creates an east wind in the summertime, it can get some pretty terrible heat waves. Whereas in global warming, on the other hand, wind usually blows off the Pacific all the time. It's very hard to get a heat wave on the west coast. To get a heat wave on the west coast, you have to have wind out of the east. And that can only be created by unusual placement of the jet stream, especially in the summertime. Many of the records on the west coast, highs and lows both, go back to the 1800s. Many of them are unchallenged to this day. Because back then the climate wasn't what it is today. The weather patterns were different. That's going to go into the next thing that comes to my mind. There are some people out there that are thinking that man is causing all this crazy weather. They're altering the weather. I don't agree with that. Anybody that looks back in climatic history know that during periods of global cooling, the weather got crazy. Even crazier than it is now. Like I say, even just looking at San Diego getting a half-inch of rain in one day in the month of May, that's unheard of in modern times. These records have gone unchallenged since the middle 1800s. They're 150 years plus these records have stood. So people that try to say that mankind is doing this to the weather do not have an understanding of climatic history. They have not researched to see what the weather was like back in times when climate was different than today. Because weather was a lot crazier even than it is now. It's just that in most places the records don't go back far enough. They only include the times when the sun was output was very stable and higher than usual for an extended period. Most of the weather records we have only include that time period. We do not go back enough to the past, to different climate regimes that prevailed and how much it made a difference on local weather patterns.